Hey folks, I'm going to change computers here from my iPad to my laptop. That way I can be a panelist. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you like to begin with housekeeping?
Yes, Wayne, thanks.
Thanks. Ron?
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. Click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you are in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby. For meetings in other locations, please complete a blue speaker card and provide it to a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items, and times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you are authorizing recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
So officially call the hybrid legislative committee meeting of March 8th, 2024 for the South Coast Air Quality Management District to order. Welcome everyone here, online, calling from Washington and in Sacramento, our consultants and the public and staff. Let's go to Isha Reyes to please take the roll.
Mayor Lock-Dawson absent. Supervisor Hagman.
I'm here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Councilmember Rahman. I believe she's a few minutes behind. Mayor Solache.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Caccioti.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Aisha. Okay, let's move to item number 1, our action discussion items. First one is an update on the 2024 South Coast AQMD sponsored state bills. Looks like no motion is required. Derek, is that you or Philip?
That's going to be me, Chair. Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm going to provide you an update on the proposed 2024 South Coast AQMD sponsored bills. The good news is we were able to secure authors for all 3 bills, which is great. I'm going to go over, just refresh the members on the bills themselves, what they do. We are going to come in March for positions on the bills. The board has to take official position on the bills in order for us to move forward to support the bills. We don't have all the bill language in time to present today, but we'll get it all by next month. Well, probably should be in print either this week or next week, all the final bills. So
Derek, is Ledge Analyst working on it with us, or?
We have our consultants working on it, but yes, we've submitted what we wanted to the members who are authoring the bills. They were going to submit it to Ledge Council and then put it in print. So we didn't get it back in time to send it out and meet the noticing deadline for committee. But we'll bring it back next month just to get the okay to move forward with them. So just a real quick overview of the 3 bills. The first one is the Air District Board Member Compensation Limit Increase. That bill is AB 2522 by Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo. If you recall, what we're doing is we're essentially doubling the amount of board member compensation or the stipend that they get, that you all get. At least for us, it's going to be $100 or go from $100 to $200, and the maximum amount is going to go to $2,000. Other air districts are also going to be part of the bill, and they're submitting their language because they're under different statutes within the law. So they need to submit to us their change in their statute. But pretty much they're going along with the doubling of it. Some don't get as much as we do, but most of them get as much as our board members get. There's also going to include a CPI increase every year. And the good thing is that this bill is in line with SB 329 by Senator Dodd last year that passed. That's council members got a doubling of their stipend. It didn't go to appropriations, which was good last year, and we're hoping this one is not key for appropriations right now, but who knows what happens once it gets assigned. The other bill is the CAR board member district representative fair compensation bill, and this bill would provide all CAR board members pay. Right now, there's about 6 air district board members that do not get compensated for being representatives of the air districts on ARB. Everybody else gets compensated. They're all governor appointees. Even the air districts members are governor appointees, but they don't get paid. So we're just trying to get them fair compensation, equality, and parity with the other board members. The last one is the CAR Memorial Program update, and that bill is, I forgot to mention that the CAR board member representative fair compensation bill is by Assemblywoman Lisa Calderon. The CAR Memorial Program bill update is by Senator Archuleta, SB 1158, and that bill will allow for a liquidation date to go from 4 years to 6 years. And additionally, what it'll do is it will increase the admin fee that the air districts get from 6 1/4, as example, our air district, to 12 1/2. Some of the air districts already get 12 1/2, but that's because they're smaller and it's allowed in statute. The one thing I do want to note about this is Wayne and I met with Steve Cliff last week, and they said that they may be able to do this administratively, which would be great if they can do that. And if they do, then we'll notify the author and we won't move forward with the bill. But they want us. We also met with Susan Chan from the Speaker's office. She said for us to go concurrently with our bill and also with working with ARB. And she also said that we should get DOF concurrence also to make sure that they're okay with the increase. So that's always can be a challenge going through DOF, but hopefully we will be able to move forward with that. And that's the end of my updates. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Derek, thank you so much. Committee members, any questions for Derek on those 3 bills? I don't see any hands raised from our committee members online. Mr. Salache, Supervisor Perez? No hands raised? Okay, let's see, that's number 1. Are there any public comments on this item? Any hands raised? I see none in the auditorium. Wayne, do you see any online?
No.
Okay, no public comment. Great. Let's move on to item number 2. Thank you, Derek. Item number 2 is recommended position on some state bills. Is it Philip, you're presenting on this one?
Yes,
Okay.
apologize. I'll be standing in for Denise on
Okay.
this. So, good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'll be presenting on AB 1894 by Assemblymember Ta. This bill would require a local air district to provide a person or business with a minimum of 30 days and maximum of 60 days to rectify an air pollution violation before being subject to civil penalties. Also, wanted to note that the author is proposing to amend the bill to have it only apply to small businesses as specially defined. Penalties for air quality violations exist to act as a deterrent to prevent unregulated releases of air pollutants and protect public health. For minor violations and as otherwise appropriate, air districts often work with businesses to resolve noncompliance and potentially issue a warning prior to issuing any penalties. Additionally, South Coast has a small business assistance unit that works with small businesses to educate them and to help them comply with applicable regulations and laws. However, no matter the size of the business in violation, this bill's approach would lessen local air districts' authority and discretion in working with and/or punishing violators of air quality regulations, diminish the ability for penalties to act as deterrents, and hurt the district's ability to reduce emissions of air toxics and protect public health. Further, this bill would negate air districts' ability to penalize short-term emission situations such as nuisances, excess flaring, accidental releases, asbestos violations, and leaks repaired within 30 days, just to give some examples, essentially making these violations civilly unenforceable. Consequently, by limiting districts' ability to enforce air quality laws and regulations, this bill would contradict the Clean Air Act, which provides that every state implementation plan shall include enforceable emission limitations and other control measures. And finally, the Health and Safety Code already protects businesses by requiring multiple factors to be taken into account to ensure that if a fine is imposed for a violation, that it is fair and not overly burdensome. These factors include the extent of the harm caused, the nature and persistence of the violation, the length of time involved, frequency of past violations, actions taken by the business to mitigate, and financial burden to the business. So AB 1894 thus conflicts with South Coast AQMD's core mission of improving air quality and protecting the health of all communities within the South Coast region, and staff recommends an opposed position on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Crabbe?
I just, obviously, I love to protect my small business, and I get the author's intent, but I also truly believe in local control on this, where we should be able to do that. And I think as a board, we should consider some of these provisions the author's putting in on our own, different things. So small business, we may want to give them 30, 60 days, but I think that discretion should be here locally. So I'll support the opposed position, but Wayne, I would love to come back at some point and look at how do we do different things. The flares, I get it. You want to be able to go ahead and jump on that right away and really prevent those type of things. But the author's intent here is to help work with small business to keep them going here. And I'd rather do that internally than have the state tell us what to do.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor. That is something that Philip described in terms of our ability to review a whole host of factors. The business size, business experience, outreach, communications, those are all things that we do. We certainly understand the perspective of small business, big business, all business when it comes to these issues. We'll continue to look at intent. We'll continue to look at a whole host of factors as we move forward. And I know we'd be happy to talk to you about our program.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. Okay. You got a motion? That's a motion to
Yes.
support the opposed position. I have a hand raised by Mayor Salache.
I'll second the motion, but I also wanted to echo Supervisor Hagman's, input on the small business community. Obviously, I work with the small business in my day job, and I think it's imperative that that we are considerate that at the local level, like the supervisor said. So I just want to echo that sentiment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rahman or Supervisor Perez, any questions for staff? There's been a motion and a second.
None from me.
Thank you, Ms. Councilmember. Wayne, is there any public comment in this item?
See none right now.
Okay, none in the auditorium. Anybody wants to comment, please raise your hand. Give you a few seconds. See no hands raised. There's a motion by Supervisor Hagman, a second by Mayor Salache, and that's to support staff's position to oppose this piece of legislation. That's correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Aisha, go ahead with the roll call.
Mayor Lock Dawson absent. Supervisor Hagman.
Hagman, aye.
Supervisor Perez.
Aye.
Councilmember Rahman,
Yes.
Mayor Solache,
Yes.
Councilmember Caciotti.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0, one absent.
Thanks, Aisha. We'll move on to item number 3 on our agenda. That's a recommended position on a state proposition 1935. Philip Crabb again. Philip, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Prop 1935, which is eligible to be on the November 2024 statewide ballot, would amend the California Constitution to limit the ability of voters and local governments to raise state and local revenues for government services. Specifically, the measure would, for new or increased state taxes currently enacted by 2/3 vote of the legislature, also require a statewide election and majority vote approval. Limit voters' ability to pass voter-proposed local special taxes by raising vote requirements to 2/3. Eliminate voters' ability to advise how to spend revenues from a proposed general tax on the same ballot. Expand the definition of taxes to include certain regulatory fees, broadening application of the new tax approval requirements, and retroactively void all state and local taxes or fees adopted after January 1st, 2022, if they do not align with the provisions of Prop 1935. Prop 1935 would change the rules for how state and local governments can impose taxes, fees, and other charges, and this would hurt funding streams and could undermine fees that have been and will be passed by South Coast AQMD. It's important to note that in response to Prop 1935, the California legislature passed Assembly Constitutional Amendment 13, the Protect and Retain the Majority Vote Act, which will also appear on the November 2024 statewide ballot. If passed by the voters, ACA 13 would require an initiative constitutional amendment that increases voter approval requirements for state or local measures to itself be approved by the same supermajority vote that it proposes. Thus, if the voters approve ACA 13, its provisions would apply to Prop 1935 and would require a 2/3 majority vote for Prop 1935 to pass. Additionally, ACA 13 guarantees in the state constitution the ability of local governments to submit advisory questions to voters. As a final reminder, South Coast AQMD has already taken a support position on ACA 13. Thus, staff recommends an opposed position on Proposition 1935. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Questions for Philip from committee members?
I'll move staff recommendations.
There's a motion by Hagman to move staff's recommendation to oppose this measure.
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Rahman. Any public comment? See no public comment online, none here in the auditorium. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call. Aisha, go ahead, please.
Chair Dawson absent. Supervisor Hagman,
Hagman, aye.
Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Rahman,
Yes.
Mayor Solache,
Yes.
Councilmember Caciotti.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0, one absent.
thanks, Aisha.
Thank you.
On to discussion items, update on our federal legislative issues. No motions required in these items, and we'll start with Mark Kadish. Mark, you here today?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. Good to see you. I just wanted to give 2 brief updates to my report. The first, I guess, as you know, Congress is in the process today of passing 6 appropriations bills to keep a big chunk of the government open. Another consultant will walk you through some of the details of those bills, but I just wanted to highlight for you today that one piece of the Department of Energy appropriations bill, as you know, we requested that our senators support what's colloquially known as an earmark for a project that we support called the Hybrid Tugboat Project. Both senators included it in their request for $500,000, which we will receive when the bill is signed into law. It's not, earmarks are never an enormous amount of money, but I think it's a good indication that we were listed on their priority projects. So that should be happening. We expect that the Senate will pass that bill today, and President should sign it also today. The second piece that I'd like to update you on is the reaction of our delegation to EPA's recent disapproval of our SIP. As As you know, we've been in contact with our delegation to explain the consequences of that, the potential consequences of that, and what's needed. I'm happy to report that two of our most prominent members, Senator Padilla, the senior senator, and Congressman Pete Aguilar, the highest ranking Democrat in the California delegation, have both reached out personally to senior leadership in the EPA to express their concern, their frustration with EPA doing this, and also to urge them to work as they have more closely with us to resolve this issue. And I think significantly, importantly, to urge EPA to do its fair share to resolve this problem, that we can't do it without more federal funding, more federal regulations. So the fact that our senior delegation leaders are really pressing EPA, I take as a very good sign. I give a lot of credit, Mr. Chairman. You'll recall this happened really when you and other board members were here recently, and we had the opportunity to kind of walk our delegation through the issue, the consequences, and what was needed. And I think that's really paid off. An enormous percentage of our delegation has raised concerns and are really backing us on this. So with that, I'll stop and either answer any questions or however you'd like to proceed.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for your efforts back in Washington. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Kadish?
I just have one. So what is their, I know they're concerned and I know they want to help us. What is the path that they're looking at doing? I mean, it definitely, in my mind, requires legislation. Are they willing to author legislation, or, I mean, just to push back doesn't change the statute. Just to say, hey, you know, we're going to accept partial recommendations doesn't really fix it. It kind of prolongs it. Are they willing to take up legislation?
I don't know if Wayne or Derek or Lisa wants to jump in first. If not, I'm happy to respond.
Hey, Mark, let me jump in on this one.
Sure.
So are they willing to entertain legislation? Yes. But we have asked them right now to keep the pressure on the agency. There's a number of different challenges that we see that we're facing with regards to EPA and the Clean Air Act. So a lot will depend on what EPA, how it decides to respond with regards to the challenge before it with regards to taking responsibility for regulating those sources under its control. If they step up and if they take voluntary measures, we think that is the most appropriate action. If they don't, then I think that there are some serious challenges that we can look at with regards to whether there's legislative or whether there's other means to bring about the kind of change that we want. So I would say at this point, one of the biggest challenges we have, frankly, is kind of holding them in this hold pattern so that they don't move forward with legislation. Part of the challenge that we face is everything is working in concert to get where we need to be. The sanctions, the attainment dates, all of these things work together. And so we want to try to preserve as much as we can, but if we can't, then we'll do what's necessary. And if it is, in fact, a legislative change, that's some of the things that we're already looking at and preparing language to move forward.
I mean, and I guess we have all our representatives here from DC. One of our premises are, well, change the rules for the entire country, and certain things we don't have the ability to do right now. Me personally, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Yeah, maybe 10 years, 15 years now when technology catches up with the price of things. But is that really an option? And do we hurt ourselves in timing because legislation takes a while to do?
Yeah, I think that in answer to your question, the potential opportunity to do a very limited action, I think actually that probably has more success than trying to look at a broad Clean Air Act change. And I think that many of the people that we've spoken to in the past when there have been challenges about sanctions and the like, that many of the congressional members have said at that time, we will address this. We will not let that happen. So that's why I'm more confident that we could do a very drastic but very specific action. But what the real incentive and the real desire on our part is to bring about the right thing by EPA. They need to do the right thing by granting California its waivers. They need to do the right thing by taking on those sources for which they're responsible and recognizing that. And that's really what we're working on. So many of our groups and our teams are working with CARB, working with EPA right now, furiously over the next several weeks to try to come to kind of resolution. I think that what we're trying to do almost on a weekly basis is sort of see, are we making the kind of progress that we need to see so that we don't get in a position, as you're saying, Supervisor Hagman, where maybe we're too late and we wouldn't be able to do something. Mark and all of the consultants are keeping the delegation apprised. Lisa and her team are working very closely. We're working, Derek and I were just in Sacramento last week working with state agencies. So it's a very intense, we're totally focused on it. And I hope that we'll be able to keep it where it needs to be and not be faced where we're too late to have legislative change occur.
And I think that I'm really looking for the advice of our representatives in DC as well. I mean, my layman's understanding is unless EPA takes a stance to start regulating trains, planes, and ships, we're not going to make it there. And the reality is, yes, we're hopeful they make some changes for that. The political reality is election year. It's not 90% of the country's need, nor do they want to push that on their business. And these groups have very strong lobbyists out there. I just don't, very small percentage, I think is going to happen. And frankly, if it does happen, we had a transportation panel yesterday at SCAG, and I'm sure you've heard about it, where one of the largest projects in the Inland Empire of $4 or $5 billion investment says it goes away if there are changes. And so it has real effects on our local economy. 1 out of every 3 jobs is directly or indirectly respond to logistics in California. And, so to obtain certain goals, which is our job to do, I still want us to keep mindful of the larger picture and the political reality of things. And do we get ourselves backed up in the corner so bad that something drastic happens versus doing things maybe on a slower pace? And maybe that's the outcome. Hey, we may not be able to reach it by this year, but maybe by this year we can, and we're going to do things slowly to do that. And most of the time for legislation, we do a regional legislation versus a broad change. I have a number of those bills going through for my county this year alone for small areas of half a city to make certain changes to legislation. Those are a lot easier to obtain than trying to do broad scale changes as well.
Yeah, I also want to note, Supervisor, that in addition to legislative changes and working with the administration, we also have legal options. And our legal team is working very aggressively on what that might entail. And the other important aspect here is the timing, right? EPA extended the response time, I want to say to August. It was July. I'm sorry, April 3rd is the response time for the comments, but they also extended the time by which they have to come to a decision by 30 days. So there is that aspect. And then when we're talking about EPA still has to take the time to take its formal action. And then at that time, there's a clock that may or may not begin depending on where we start out. My whole point here is that we do have a fair amount of time. There are a lot of things going, and we're moving as aggressively as we possibly can.
Thank you, Wayne. Any more questions for Mr. Kadish? Good, we'll move on to, I don't see any hands raised by committee members. We'll move on to Gary Hoitzman. Gary, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm going to report today on 4 of the major funding programs that we are following in the appropriations process. As Mark mentioned, today we're sort of at the end game, getting to the end game here of the appropriations process. And this is for fiscal year 2024. And we expect this like minibus bill of 6 bills to be passed today. And within that bill is the Department of Transportation, Energy, and the EPA. And so we're looking at these programs very closely as we have been. So let me go through the numbers for you quickly. DERA, Diesel Emission Reduction Act, we're at 90 million in this bill. That's down about 10, that's down exactly 10 million from last year. That's a 10% cut. The Targeted Airshed Grant Program is at 67 million. That's down 2.9 million, about a 4% cut. The Section 103, 105 Clean Air Grant Program is at 235.9 million. That's down about 13 million, about a 5% cut there. These numbers are basically going back close to the 2022 numbers. In fact, the TAG and the 103, 105 numbers are higher than the 2022 numbers. DERA is about the same. What you're looking at here is the result of negotiations between the Republicans in the House, Democrats in the Senate. And the 2023 numbers were the result of the Pelosi Democrats in charge having the higher numbers for these programs. And here with the Republicans in charge in the House, there's a negotiation and some of these numbers have come down. So that's what we're looking at there. Also want to mention the Port Infrastructure Development Grant Program, another one we watch very closely. This bill includes 120 million in addition to the 450 million that's already been advance appropriated for this program. That's out in a grant application situation right now. This is down about 92 million from last year. Overall, this calculates out to about a 13% cut in this program. Again, a part of this negotiation that's happened here. So that's the quick report on where we stand right now. This bill is expected to be passed tonight or tomorrow, and this will be the end of fiscal 24. And we're going to start FY 25 right away. So there's where we are. I'll leave it right there. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Gary. Committee members, any questions for Gary Hutzma? See no hands raised. Move on to Amelia Jenkins Morales. Amelia, go ahead, please, and welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm Amelia Jenkins Morales from Cassidy and Associates. While the Kadish Group tends to focus their work on the California delegation, today I was asked to just do a quick report on the outcome of the California primaries. Part of what Cassidy and Associates does is looks at the broader political dynamics across Congress and the administration. So I'm just going to quickly tick through a couple of the results from the open seats within the broader delegation, which serves South Coast, and also talk about a couple of contested seats as well. So on the Congressional District 29, which is an open seat currently held by Congressman Cardenas, the candidate Ribas, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, received 49%. In Congressional District 30, the open seat vacated by Schiff Friedman got 28.6% of the vote. In Congressional District 31, it's a seat being vacated by Congresswoman Napolitano. It looks like a three-way split between Cisneros, Martinez, and Casas. So one Democrat and two Republicans. Just to highlight Congressional District 41, which is currently held by Congressman Calvert and tends to be contested. Congressman Calvert got 50.4% of the vote and Rollins at 41.1%. Go down to Congressional District 47, currently held by Congresswoman Porter. Val, the Republican, 32.8%, and Min, the Democrat, 25.8%. And one other contested seat that is of particular interest would be Congressional District 49, currently held by Mike Levin. He received 51% of the vote, and Gunderson received 25%. So I'm happy to answer any questions that I can on this. Otherwise, that completes my report.
Amelia, thank you very much. Committee members, any questions for Amelia? Not here. I see no hands raised online. I don't have any questions. Is there any public comment on item number 4, Wayne?
There is not.
Okay, and none here in the auditorium. We'll move on to item number 5, update, discussion on state legislative issues. We'll start with Paul Gonzalez, Joe A. Gonzalez and Son. Paul, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Do have a very brief update to my written report for you this morning. The proposal projects a $38 billion budget deficit, which was a stark contrast to the Legislative Analyst Office projected $58 billion budget deficit. So the state's January tax receipts came in about $15 billion under the administration's projections, taking the $58 billion budget deficit to about $73 billion. However, the February personal income tax and corporation tax receipts came in $1.16 billion above the administration's projections. There was $706 million above projections for the personal income tax and $418 million above projections for the corporation tax. So this is a positive sign for revenues for the state. However, the legislature and the governor still have their work cut out for them this year and the out years with the state budget. So as always, we will continue to keep you apprised as the budget negotiations continue. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Paul. Any questions for Paul from committee members? I see no hands raised. Next, we'll go to David Quintana with Resolute. David, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a very brief update to our report on February 22nd. CARB released the outcomes of their February auction under cap and trade. They reported that $1.3 billion came in from that auction, which means that right now, through the first 3 quarters of 23-24 fiscal year, we've brought in $3.96 billion under cap and trade. Remember, all of that goes to the GGRF. That means we've almost equaled our $4 billion that was raised all of the previous fiscal year. So it's looking really good on cap and trade. That's one bright spot in the economy. There is one auction left in May. And if that auction continues with the trend that we're seeing, that means we might break $5 billion raised for the first time under cap and trade. Again, that money will go to the GGRF, which is good for some of our programs and will reduce the cost pressure of the governor. You yank money out of there. Anyway, that's my report, sir.
Thanks, David. Any questions for Mr. Quintana from committee members? See no hands raised. We'll go on to our final speaker on this, Ross Buckley with California Advisors. Ross, welcome. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Ross Buckley. Wanted to provide an update on the election as ballots continue to be counted here in California. The Secretary of State is currently estimating that there's still over 2.8 million ballots left to count, so still a long ways to go in many of these races here. There are many counties who haven't reported election results since election night, which was obviously Tuesday night. But we are going to see a rather large update this afternoon. 32 counties are currently planning on providing election updates this afternoon. So we'll see a sizable update then. Voter turnout in California continues to be an issue. As it currently sits, we're looking at about 20% voter turnout here in California. That number will continue to grow as they are tabulating votes, but it's likely to be one of the lowest election turnouts in recent history. Again, while there's many elections too close to call, there were 15 members of the state legislature who decided to run for Congress or local elected office. Depending on the outcome of these elections in November, it could trigger a number of special elections here in California in 2025. It should be noted that that really only applies to typically state senators who are in the middle of their 4-year terms. For assembly members who decide to run for some of these offices, they already had to forgo running for assembly, so there'll be a new class of members filling those seats already. That completes my report, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ross. Any question for Mr. Buckley from our committee members? I don't see any hands raised. Any public comment, Wayne? Wayne says no. None here in the auditorium. So we'll move on to other matters. Any other business committee members? I see none here in the auditorium. None online. No any public comment in this matter. Other matters? No hands raised, Wayne says. None here in the auditorium. This is a public comment period right now for members of the public. If you want to participate, raise your hand online. If you're in the auditorium, please come forward. I do see a hand raised at City of Linwood. Mayor Salache, go ahead, please. We can't hear anybody at Linwood.
Thank you, Chair Cacciati. Thank you, Mayor Salachi, for the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Thomas Yelenich. I'm with the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. This morning, I would like to follow up on the recent working group meetings that AQMD staff had on the indirect source rule and how they tie to your earlier discussion today regarding a federal strategy for dealing with federal sources. One, I want to thank staff for having those working group meetings. They were productive. While the meetings unfortunately did not get into any of the technical issues related to emission reductions, they were a good policy discussion. And one of the things, a common theme that came out through that meeting was the most effective way, the most sure way to achieve emission reductions in the future is federal action on federal sources. And so your discussion earlier today in this committee really indicated the important role US EPA has and the Congress has in addressing federal sources. So I would ask that this committee take up before it a strong position and strategy to ensure that the federal government takes the necessary action to reduce emissions. That is the way to bring everyone together to tackle emissions from ships, locomotives, aircraft in this region. In addition, there is growing concern about the strategy that AQMD is pursuing. I'm sharing a letter that I believe you've now all received that went out from Teamsters Joint Council 42, which represents 23 Teamster local unions. You should all have a copy of that letter, and just to read a portion of it, we implore you to stand with us in advocating for a collaborative approach. Instead of resorting to punitive measures that could decimate jobs, disrupt supply chains, and imperil our national security, let us come together to find equitable solutions. That letter was sent by the Joint Council to the mayors of Los Angeles and Long Beach. Obviously, important stakeholders as they represent the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And so I would urge this committee and the district to come together with everyone on finding a collaborative approach that seeks federal action to reduce emissions from federal sources. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Thomas. Any more public comment in any of our remote sites in Los Angeles or Riverside? See no more hands raised. Mayor Salachi, your hand's still raised. You want any comments?
I'll lower it down now, sorry.
Thank you. We'll move on from public comment. Finally, our next meeting date is Friday, April 12th at 9 a.m. here in the district. With that, thank you everybody for your hard work. We'll adjourn.
Thank you.